Hey good people, Batavia here. We are going to cover off on watering my garden. I get this question quite a bit, so that's why I wanted to take a beat and share a couple of the basics that I follow when it comes to watering. I actually will share yesterday's watering of some containers, which also included fertilizer. Just because of the difference between managing containers and how a lot of that goodness escapes from the soil in containers compared to your raised beds. I am watering super early in the morning. It's just after 6. I typically don't water any later than 6, 7, maybe 8 o'clock at the latest. So my watering practice has generally been watering by hand. I know there's a lot to get done, but it gives me a chance to relax a bit, go over a number of things in my head, connect with the plants, take a closer look at some of the plants, and identify if I have some issues I need to worry about. And because I'm watering deeply and only doing this about once a week, it's not that big of a drain for me personally. If we get further into the season, you will see, or I may reference, that I've pulled out my overhead sprinkler, which is not uncommon for me over the last couple of years with the garden growing, expanding, so to speak. Or if I'm away, like if I'm away from home for a number of days, I'll water deeply before I leave, but if I don't think I'll be back in time to do another good watering, I'll just put my sprinkler on a timer. And that's the same thing I do throughout the season if I want to turn the sprinkler on. So the watering is just a matter of, I generally do about a 10 count, so 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, and so on. I don't necessarily water every single plant by hand. This cluster of plants, they're pretty packed in, so I feel like I can water in this vicinity. And I probably would increase it in that case to maybe 15, 20 count. So I'll start at the base of the plants, give them a soak, and then I'll water around that area as well. And so moving the nozzle is really just more of to break up the monotony more than anything. Generally speaking, your gardens will need about 1 inch of water a week. And I'm talking about places that, aren't necessarily getting, 100 plus degree temperatures often. How do you know if you need to water? Simple test. Take my index finger, I'm putting it all the way down into the soil, and immediately I could feel dampness if it was really wet, right? But it's pretty dry, so I know my timing is right where I need to come in and get these beds watered. I'm in Chicago, Illinois. I garden in zone 6A. Our temperatures are not super hot, right? So in the spring when I'm first planting out, I will give everything a good deep drink when I first plant. And if it's April, I may not water for a couple of weeks, right? We're getting some spring rains. The sun isn't soaking up that water as much. As we get closer into the summer, our temperatures rarely get into like triple digits. If we see 100 degrees Fahrenheit, like it's a real to do. So we definitely live in the 80s, sometimes we venture into the 90s. So I don't have kind of the trouble of needing to water every day like some may, just based on their temperatures and their climate. I do follow principles like including mulch in both my raised beds and my containers, in addition to them suppressing weeds. And depending on the type of mulch you actually use, it could be adding nutrients to your soil as well. It also retains water. So for the mulch I'm using in this area, it is shredded leaves. I also have some beds and spaces that I'm using straw in. When I'm watering overhead, of course, it's watering the entire plant. When I'm watering by hand, I'm trying to get closer to the base. It's nothing wrong with getting the leaves wet, but the more they get wet, depending on your setup, you could be introducing disease if there's splash up from the soil. I cover that pretty well with the mulch, and the bed here is completely collard greens, but I would treat my tomato bed over there the same way. So same rules apply when it comes to about once a week, watering deeply, not shallowly. That what I just did was a shallow watering, so I'm going to spend more time here when it comes to what I actually do. I'm a little bit intimidated by drip irrigation. I know that that's going to be a common suggestion. So we're adding that to the longer list of garden goals. My containers, which I'll show you what I do with those, I water those more often. Raised beds are probably about once a week. Containers are probably going to be every couple of days. Depending on how small the container is, it could be even as often as every day. And yeah, relax a bit, go over the number of things that are in my head, check out plant health, and just get it done. All right, so let's go ahead and cut over to our containers that are just behind me. So for watering, I kind of do like a 10 count. Sit by the base of the plant, 1 1000, 2 1000, and so on. What I'm doing different today is I'm going to do that for all of these plants, well, specifically for the collards, and then I'm going to come back around with my watering can because I have some fertilizer in here. This is the fish and seaweed fertilizer, and so I'm going to actually shorten my count. So regular watering would be like a 10 count, right? And then I'll come back and see if water has started to escape from the bottom. Then I feel like I've watered it enough. In this case, I'm going to do like a 5 count. I want to make sure that I get first the soil damp and then come back in with the fertilizer. And so the measurements for kind of established plants call for 1/8 of a cup per gallon. And so this is 2-gallon water pitcher. And so I just put 1/4 of a cup in, and I actually have it here. So it comes in a different container, of course, but I put it into this container just to make it easier for me to move around in the garden with it. I keep it indoors because this kind of thing likes to be cool instead. And so you can already see some water is escaping from the bottom. You may not be able to see it, but it is. I'm doing this early in the morning. The sun's starting to get a little bit higher in the sky. Because it has that fish and seaweed mixture, there'll be some flies over here for a little bit this morning, but that's fine. I'm going to get my work done in this corner of the garden and keep moving. So yeah, that is a quick note on watering while I'm fertilizing.